Another video, another new filming location because I cannot decide where I want to make my videos. Hey guys, what is up? My name's Zoe. Welcome back to the channel, and today's video is going to be all of my least favorite books that I read in 2022. So this video, I'm aware, could get pretty controversial, especially because I know that I do have some books in here that are favorites among a lot of people. And I'm a little nervous to share my opinions if I'm being 100% honest, but that is the point of reading. Everybody has different favorites, everybody has different least favorites, and it's just kind of cool to see how everybody perceives books. So I just wanted to share what I really did not like this year. So this year, so far, I have read 174 books, which is a very big number, meaning there were a lot of good books, but there were also a lot of bad books that I read. And I had quite the time choosing which books to talk about today, but for the sake of the video, I made it 22 books, so this can be the 22 books that I disliked in 2022. So I have a list written up on my MacBook, and I'm just going to be reading what books I disliked the most and telling you why. Also, I did get pretty lucky in that I only actually bought one of the books on this list. All the rest I either borrowed or read on Libby. So I'm feeling pretty good about all the money that I saved, knowing that I did not like any of these books. That's pretty cool. For this list, I don't have like a solid star rating for every book because my opinions do change a lot. I don't think I'm gonna say star ratings for each book, but just know that each book is like 2.5 stars or less for me. Anyways, without further ado, let's just get into all the books that I hated in the year 2022. So I'm gonna start backwards, kind of. I'm starting with an honorable mention because it's not a bad book, it was just a bad ending. So a book that I felt this way about was An Emotion of Great Delight. This book was actually really good. It was really heartfelt. It had me sucked in from the first chapter. I really loved this book, but the ending was genuinely one of the worst endings I've ever read in a book, and I was so disappointed. And as soon as I finished reading it, I went and looked up reviews on Goodreads, and everybody agreed with me that it just had a terrible ending, which was so upsetting. And I feel like I need like a part 2 to this book now because I just need to know what happens next. I don't know, it was just frustrating. I'm not going to talk about it because it would kind of spoil the whole book, but if you have read it, you probably know what I'm talking about. And I just didn't like the ending for that book. But now getting into the list of the 22 books, these are in no particular order. They're just basically in the order that I read them this year. So the first book on the list is The Lake by Natasha Preston. This was my first book by Natasha Preston, and this one, kind of like the last book, is mainly on this list because of the ending. The book itself was okay. It was YA, it was thriller, mystery, it was like kind of interesting. It was pretty boring at parts, but like it was good. It wasn't like a terrible book, but the ending was just so frustrating. I felt like it was kind of like a cop-out almost, the way that it ended. Like she could have written more and had a better ending, but it kind of felt like she just wanted to be done with the book, so she just wrote a really rushed, quick ending, and I did not like it. The second book that is on this list is The Woman in the Window by AJ Finn. This book was so long. It's like 400 pages long, and it felt like 1,000 pages. It was so boring and so long. It took everything in me to get through it. I did not like the characters. I didn't like the way that the main character was portrayed because she did have a mental illness in the book, but that basically, you know, as authors can sometimes do, made her like the punching bag for everybody in the book. They all just thought that she was crazy or whatever, and it was just kind of irritating how she was treated at a lot of points during the book when, you know, as the reader, you know that she's not crazy, for lack of a better term. I just didn't like the book. I thought it was boring. The ending was not exciting to me, and I watched the movie, and the movie was better than the book, which is saying something because I did not like the movie. So I just really felt frustrated for the majority of this book, and I also just felt very bored. Number 3 on the list is In 5 Years by Rebecca Surley. I believe that's how you say her last name. That's how I've heard it pronounced, so that's how I'm gonna say it. This book is a romance, but it also follows 2 best friends, and it is very much marketed as just a romance, but it is also a tragedy, and it's very heartbreaking, which I was not expecting. And if I'm gonna be honest, it just triggered me because of what happened in the book. It was something that is it hit hard for me, and I just wish that I had looked up the trigger warnings before I read the book. So that definitely brought my rating down. But aside from that, I just didn't like the story. I felt like it was very weird because of what happened. I don't want to talk too much about it because I don't want to spoil it for anybody who hasn't read it, because I'm not sure what exactly is a spoiler and what isn't. But basically, somebody that our main character ends up sleeping with, it just didn't sit right with me, and I felt very like weird about it, and the ending again was not good to me. So this whole book kind of was just a fiasco for me, and I wanted it to be over, which seems to be a running theme with these books. I just wanted them all to end. Number 4 on the list is one that I have wanted to read for so long, and I finally did, and I'm very sad that it made it on this list, and that is Carrie by Stephen King. It is the first book that he published, and you know, it's a classic. I love the movie Carrie. I was excited to read the book Carrie, and I was bored. It was so boring, just so much description, so long. I was not interested in any part of this book. I don't know. I understand that it was Stephen King's first published work, and that, you know, authors can sometimes get better with time, as Stephen King obviously did, at least in my opinion, but this book specifically was not for me. I am glad that I read it, because now I can say that I've read his first published book, but as far as Stephen King books go, it is definitely down there in my least favorite books by him and my least favorite books for the year. Next is Where the Crawdads Sing by Delia Owen. This one is very controversial because of the author. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can look it up. But this one I didn't really care for very much. I think parts of the story were interesting, but I thought it was boring. All of these books have the same theme going on, don't they? I actually guessed the end, which was very underwhelming. I liked the characters, I will say that much. I was very into Kaya and Tate. I really liked them. I thought they were cute as individuals and as a couple. I thought it was just a really sweet story, and I felt terribly for Kaya growing up all alone. It was just so sad to read about that, but the book was just not interesting to me. It was just very boring, and it almost put me to sleep. And the movie actually did put me to sleep. I went and saw it in the theater, and I literally fell asleep halfway through. So just not for me. Number 6 is Instant Karma by Marissa Meyer. This is a book that nothing is inherently wrong with the book. I think it was just one of those situations where it is a YA book, and I personally felt like it was too juvenile for me. And so I just felt very uninterested in a lot of the story. I felt like a lot of it was just very pointless. I didn't really care for the characters. There was some cute, you know, banter, cute moments throughout it, but overall it was just not very interesting to me, and I do think that's probably because I am 21. I'm not the target audience for this book or any YA book, so it makes sense that sometimes I don't fully connect with the story, but this one was a definite disconnect, and I just didn't enjoy it. Number 7 is The Honey Don't List by Christina Lauren. So I have read a good number of Christina Lauren books, and this is my least favorite one of theirs so far. I feel like it could have been good. It had potential. I just think that it was too rushed. I feel like I didn't totally love the characters, but there were some cute moments. I didn't totally hate the characters either. It felt like if this book had been maybe 100 pages longer, or even 50 pages longer, a lot more could have happened, and it could have been a better story. But because it was such a short book, I just think that everything was too rushed, and I didn't like the way that the whole story played out. So I think this one could potentially be a lot better if it had been a longer book. Oh boy. Number 8. This one might be a little controversial. It is Final Girls by Riley Sager. I read all of Riley Sager's backlist this year. I read every single one of his books, and they were very hit or miss for me. Some I really enjoyed, some I definitely did not, but this was the biggest miss for me. This book was just not good. I literally hated it from the first page. Like, I just felt like it was very boring. I was not interested. I didn't like the characters. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like any of it. And I guess the ending, it was just so disappointing. But I wasn't as disappointed as I might have been if I loved all of Riley Sager's books, but I don't always love his books, so I don't feel like I was that let down. And it was one of my least favorites of the year. Don't come for me if you love Riley Sager, I'm sorry. Next up is one that I was very disappointed in not liking because it was one of my most anticipated reads of the year, and that is Gallant by V.E. Schwab. I was really excited to read this book. The cover is beautiful. I was so intrigued by the cover. The synopsis was so interesting to me, and I thought I was really gonna love this book because I've liked what else I've read from V.E. Schwab, but this book just wasn't it. I got it and I didn't really care for the characters or the setting. I feel like it wasn't like thrilling or eerie at all. And the biggest issue for me why it made it on this list is because when I got to the end, I was like, where's the rest of it? Like, it just felt like such an unsatisfying ending to the book that I was just so frustrated and just let down. I feel like this is another book that had the potential to be good, but it just wasn't written that well. And I felt very bored through a lot of the book, and I don't know, I just felt very, very disappointed knowing how much I was looking forward to this book this year. I'm trying not to sound like a broken record as I talk about all of these books, but a lot of them I just had kind of the same opinions about them. So, you know, mostly I was just bored, uninterested, didn't like the characters, didn't like the ending. It's all just kind of the same, and that's why they made it on this list. But yeah, the next one is The Paris Apartment by Lucy Foley. So I read The Guest List by Lucy Foley in 2021, and I really liked it. I know a lot of people don't, but I thought it was really, really good. I really enjoyed it, flew through the book in a day. But I think that might have been an anomaly for me because as I've read more of her books, each one has just been worse for me. Like, they've just gone downhill. But The Paris Apartment was my least favorite book I've read by her and one of my least favorite books of the year overall. I was so bored with this book. I didn't like a single character. I thought I would love it because it was in Paris, but even that aspect did not keep me drawn in. I literally did not care about a single thing that happened. I didn't care who died. I didn't care who lived. I didn't care who went to jail. I did not care about a single thing. It was just so boring that, like, when the twist came at the end, I didn't care. It did not matter to me one bit. And the only reason I didn't DNF this book was because I'm very stubborn and I don't like to DNF books. So I continued it, but I really did not like that book. Okay, the next book is Devil House by John Darnielle. I read this book because the author was recommended to me by someone close to me, and I just figured why not read his brand new book. So I did, and I hated it. I hated it so much. First of all, the setting of it was just not it. It made me feel ick, gross. Didn't enjoy that about it. The whole story felt very boring and also very confusing. It was very all over the place. Like, you would go back and forth between timelines and characters so quickly, and it wouldn't be very specific what you were talking about at the time. So I would have no idea what part of the story we were even at, or like who we were following at a specific time. And also, it was split into parts, and one part was in this font that I couldn't read, and it went back to like medieval times and started talking about these knights, and it was like some sort of fairy tale or something. But I have no idea what it even had to do with the story, how it related to the book, and I actually just skipped that part because I didn't even understand what was going on. It just felt like such a mess to me. I was just, I was so frustrated. Another one that I completely would have DNF'd if I weren't so stubborn, and I honestly wish that I had DNF'd it, but I just had this feeling that it would get better, but it didn't. So I really didn't like that book, sadly. Okay, what book are we on now? I think number 12, and that will be Boy Meets Boy by David Levithan. I read this in June for Pride Month. I thought it would be fun. I've wanted to read it for a while. It was available on Libby, so I got it. I thought it would be a short and sweet read. It's really short, and I didn't think it would take me very long, but this book literally took forever to get through because I was completely uninvested in all of the characters and their love lives, which is what the whole book was about. And I just like found myself not caring once again. Like, I wish I had more words to describe how I felt about these books because I feel like I'm just repeating myself. But that's just how it is. Like, I just didn't care for any of these books or any of these characters. And I'm really sad because I thought I would like this one. I've wanted to read it for a long time, and David Levithan I do tend to like. So I thought that I would enjoy it, but I really didn't. And it made it on the worst list because honestly, I forgot that I even read that this year because it just left my mind right after I read it. So it's on the list for sure. Oh, number 13 is One of Us is Dead by Geneva Rose. This one was a new book that came out this year, and I thought the premise was very interesting. It is about these rich women who live in this town, and they go to the same hairdresser and basically just gossip about each other and the people in the town. and there's a murder and you have to figure out who the murderer was, and I thought it would be really, really interesting, but I just hated all of these rich women. I only liked like 2 or 3 of the characters in the entire book, and all the rest of them I would have just killed off myself. It was multiple POV. Every time a character came on that I didn't like, I would just be like, do I have to continue reading? It was just so frustrating, and I didn't like it. So that's that one. The next one is pretty well hated, I feel like. It is The Gunslinger by Stephen King. This book took me 3 or 4 tries to read, and I finally did it. And I can't say that I'm happy that I did. I found myself looking up summaries of every single chapter when I was done with it because I had no idea what was going on the entire time, which is sad because I really like Stephen King, but this one specifically was just so bad. I just don't think I can continue, and I hated literally every second of it. Okay, we're making it through the list. The next thing, number 15, is The Last Thing He Told Me by Laura Dave. I was very intrigued by this book, and I've wanted to read it since it came out because of the synopsis. I thought it sounded very interesting, but in turn, the book was actually not at all what the synopsis made it sound like it would be. I did like some of the characters, and I felt pretty attached to the daughter in the book, and I really was rooting for her the entire time, and I wanted to see how it would end up for her specifically. But this is another book with a terrible ending. The ending was so unsatisfying. It like left so many loose strings, and I was like, how can it be the end? Like, we don't even know anything. The very last page or 2 was actually pretty cute, and I really enjoyed that. But like the ending as a whole was just very infuriating, and I wished that it was different. A lot of these books, if they had a different ending, I feel like it could have been a whole different scenario. I could have liked it a lot more, but these endings that these authors are writing are just so upsetting. So that's how that one went. Number 16 is definitely the most controversial book on this list, and I'm honestly kind of scared to share how I felt about this one. It is The Spanish Love Deception by Elena Armas. I gave this a 1 star. I would honestly give it a 0. It was not... No. This book is what, like over 400 pages? It's already a long book to begin with, but when you hate it from like the first page, it feels like a legit marathon. Like, no. I didn't like the characters. I felt like the whole thing was just so boring. The whole book is about a wedding that was like 5 pages long. It was just... I don't understand what people like about this. I read it because it was a popular book talk book. That is literally the only reason, and because it was available on Libby. No. It just, no. I don't even know what to say about it. I just did not like it. I didn't like the relationship, honestly. I know a lot of people do. I didn't like Aaron Blackford. I don't like anything about it, and I wish I could erase it from my memory. That's really controversial, and I feel scared saying it, but that is how I feel. I'm so sorry. And if you have a different opinion and you want to try and sway me, go for it, but I don't see what others see in it. I just didn't get it. The next one was a new book this year that a lot of people have liked, and it is Thank You for Listening. There was nothing inherently wrong with this book. Like, it was a fine book. I felt very bored the entire time. I didn't really like the characters or the romance. That was mainly the issue. Like, the actual story was kind of fun. It deals a lot with audiobook narration, and I found that all very interesting. But yeah, the romance was just not for me. I did not like it, so it made the whole book kind of go down a bit in the star rating because I just felt very disappointed that I didn't like the characters, and it was not a bad book. It barely made it on this list, but because of how much I disliked the romance, it's on here. Number 18 is Tender is the Flesh. This one is pretty popular, I feel like, and I read it again just because it was there, and I wish I hadn't. I understand that this book is like an allegory, but I don't care. The whole book was just very uninteresting and honestly kind of disgusting. I did not like any part of it, and it's another book that I wish I could just erase from my mind and never have read. Next up is The Colorado Kid by Stephen King, and it is 100% one of my least favorite books he's written in general that I've read. It just felt kind of pointless. It was very short, and it didn't feel that short, which I feel like is kind of a sign that I'm not enjoying it when it feels like it's taking me forever to read. I feel like the characters were okay, and the story was like all right, but I didn't like how it ended because you basically had no closure. And I understand that Stephen King wanted it to be this way and he wrote about it in the end that he purposely wrote it like this, but it was very frustrating to me. I don't like not having a true ending to a book. I like knowing everything, having everything wrapped up, and it was pretty boring overall. Too much description for me, not enough action, and it just wasn't my favorite. Now for our final 3 books. Again, these are not in any particular order, but we are just down to the last 3 that I have on this list. The first one is Long Live the Pumpkin Queen by Shea Ernshaw. This is The Nightmare Before Christmas fan fiction, kind of. It is about Sally and Jack just after they've been married, and basically Sally wakes up and everybody in Halloween Town is asleep and she has to figure out why. I think this is another one that was probably just too juvenile for me, so I didn't like the story, I didn't connect with it. I thought it was really boring and felt very like little kiddish. But if I'm being honest, I think this book put me into a reading slump that I have now been in for over a month, which is great. I'm loving this reading slump. But yeah, I did not like this book. Some people have really liked it, some people have really hated it, and it was just not for me. It felt very boring, and I really wish that I just hadn't finished it because then maybe I wouldn't be in a reading slump. But I can't take back the past, can I? No. The one thing I will say that I did like about it is the font was gigantic, which I love when that happens, but that's really the only good thing I can say. Number 21 is another one that is very controversial because it's been very popular this year and a lot of people love it, and that is Rock, Paper, Scissors by Alice Feeney. I don't know if it's just that I am not into thrillers as much anymore, or if I've read too many thrillers so they can't surprise me anymore, but this book was so boring and I literally guessed everything that happened in it, which is no fun. But I also just felt like it was just a very boring book. Like everything that was happening the whole time, I was like, do I care? No. I wish I had liked it. A lot of people do, and I've only talked to 1 or 2 people that actually didn't like it and that agreed with me. But I just felt very disappointed in it, especially because I had very high hopes for the story. Okay, to round out the list with number 22, it is a brand new book that just came out. It is actually a holiday book, and that is Just Like Magic by Sarah Hogle. This was my first Sarah Hogle book, and I was really excited for it because I know people love You Deserve Each Other, but I had been seeing really mixed reviews about this book. This was the one book that I actually bought, and I'm not mad about it because it looks cute on my shelf, but I don't see myself reading it again. It was a cute premise. It was basically like the holiday spirit comes to this girl because she's basically like the Grinch. She just hates the holidays. She's very unhappy, and he has to stick around until she loves Christmas and until she has a good holiday. And I thought that it sounded very interesting, and I thought it had a lot of cute moments that I really enjoyed, and I kept thinking it would get better, so I kept going, but it just didn't. I felt like the end was cute, and as I said, there were cute moments scattered throughout, but overall the book was very boring and it took me an eternity to read. I will say, in the book's defense, it could just be the fact that I'm in a reading slump that made me not like this book, but I really think that it was just not for me, which is surprising because I'm not very picky when it comes to rating holiday books. I really love the majority of the books that I read, but this one was not it. I didn't like it, and I wish that I just spent my time reading a different holiday book that I would have enjoyed a lot more. So yeah, that's the last bad book that I guess I'm gonna read this year. Hopefully, fingers crossed. I do still have a couple weeks left, but yeah, that is number 22. So those are all 22, I guess 23 books that I disliked in 2022. I know a lot of these might be very controversial and a lot of people might definitely disagree with me, but that is okay. I would actually love to hear if people do have differing opinions or the same opinions. I would love to talk about it with anybody that has read any of these books and had strong feelings about any of them. I will link my Instagram down below, or you can chat with me in the comments. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed the video. I will see you in the next one, and I hope you're having a great day.